The email notification lit up my phone at 2:17 a.m. We need to discuss your influence over Ethan. Family meeting. Sunday. Be there. I stared at Jason's message, my stomach nodding as the few words managed to unravel the careful piece I'd built over the past year. My finger hovered over the delete button, but I knew it wouldn't solve anything. Jason Warren, my brother-in-law, had finally decided to make his move. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Rebecca Mitchell, though everyone calls me Becca. Until that message arrived, I thought the worst of the family drama was behind us. I was wrong. The morning after Jason's email, I sat at our kitchen island, clutching my coffee mug like it might somehow anchor me to reality. Portland's notorious rain tapped against the windows of our Pearl District townhouse, matching my mood perfectly. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Ethan said, coming into the kitchen still damp from his morning shower. My husband of 3 years had no idea that his own brother had just declared war on me. I slid my phone across the counter. "Your brother sent this last night." Ethan's face darkened as he read the message. "This is ridiculous. You're not influencing me against anyone. Tell that to Jason. He's convinced I'm some puppet master turning you against the precious foster family business." I took a sip of coffee that had long gone cold. "This isn't about me, Ethan. It's about your decision to leave the company." 2 months ago, Ethan had announced he was leaving Foster Tech Solutions, the family business his grandfather had founded, and that his father-in-law Gerald now ran with Jason's help. Ethan wanted to start his own engineering consultancy, something more aligned with his environmental values. His decision had created a seismic rift in the family, with Jason taking it personally. "I'll call him." Ethan reached for his phone. "No." I put my hand over his. "We need to be smart about this. Jason's not just angry, he's calculating. There's something else happening here." The thing about Jason was that he never made a move, without purpose. As Foster Tech's lead counsel, he'd built a reputation for ruthless efficiency. My sister Claire had fallen for his ambition and charisma when they met in law school, but I'd always sensed something calculating beneath the polished surface. "You think this is about the board position?" Ethan asked. "I'm sure of it." With Ethan leaving, the vacant seat on the company board would likely go to Gerald's youngest daughter, my sister Zoe, who shared my skepticism about Jason's growing influence. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Coffee at Evergreen in 30, need your marketing brain." Maya Chen had been my roommate in college and was now my closest friend. As an investigative journalist for the Portland Tribune, she had a knack for seeing 3 steps ahead. I needed that perspective now. "Go," Ethan said, reading the text over my shoulder. "I've got that client meeting anyway. We'll figure out Jason's drama later." Evergreen Cafe hummed with mid-morning energy when I arrived. Maya had claimed our usual corner table, her laptop open and 2 steaming mugs waiting. "You look terrible," she said by way of greeting. "Good morning to you, too." I slumped into the chair across from her. Family drama. Jason again? Maya had an almost encyclopedic knowledge of my family dynamics. I showed her the email. Her eyebrows rose as she read it. "Family meeting? That's formal. What triggered this? Ethan's leaving the company. Jason thinks I orchestrated it to undermine the family somehow." "Did you?" "Of course not," I protested. "Ethan's been unhappy there for years. The environmental consulting has been his dream since before we met." Maya studied me over the rim of her mug. "But you're not sad he's leaving," I sighed. "I'm glad he's pursuing something he loves, and yes, I'm relieved he'll be away from Jason's influence. Does that make me the villain? In Jason's narrative? Absolutely." Maya closed her laptop. "Look, This isn't just about Ethan's career move. Jason's been consolidating power at Foster Tech for years. Your father-in-law is preparing to step back, Ethan's leaving, and suddenly there's a power vacuum. Jason's worried about who will fill it. Zoe, I said. She's next in line. And Zoe listens to you, not Jason. The realization landed like a stone. This wasn't just about Ethan or me. It was about control of the family company. With Gerald stepping back and Ethan gone, Jason was making a play for complete control, and he saw me as the obstacle. So what do I do? I asked. Boycott the family meeting? No. Maya leaned forward, her reporter instincts visibly kicking in. You go, but you go prepared. Jason's gathering the family to paint you as the problem. You need evidence that proves otherwise. Evidence of what? Of who Jason really is when the family isn't looking. Maya's expression turned serious. Becca, how much do you know about the Westridge acquisition? My stomach tightened. The land development deal? Just that Foster Tech is providing the software infrastructure. Why? Because I'm working on a story about questionable environmental practices in Portland tech companies, and Foster Tech's partnership with Westridge Development keeps coming up. There are some serious ethical concerns, possibly legal ones too. I felt the blood drain from my face. Are you saying Jason's involved in something illegal? I'm saying there's smoke and I'm looking for fire. Maya pulled out her reporter's notebook. The Westridge deal happened right after Ethan raised concerns about the company's environmental impact, yes? I nodded slowly, remembering the heated arguments between Ethan and Jason last year. Ethan was pushing for more sustainable practices. Jason shut him down, said it wasn't cost-effective. And then suddenly Foster Tech announces this major partnership with Westridge, a company with multiple EPA violations. Maya slid her notebook toward me, showing a timeline of events. The timing is suspicious. This could be why Ethan really wants out, I realized. He never gave specifics, just said he couldn't align with the company's direction anymore. You need to talk to him before Sunday, Maya advised. And Becca, start recording your conversations with Jason. Oregon's a one-party consent state. If he's building a case against you, you might need to build one too. The suggestion made my skin crawl. These were family members, not enemies. But as I stared at Maya's notes, a creeping dread told me she was right. I've actually been recording the family meetings for the past year, I admitted quietly. Maya's eyes widened. What? Why? After that disaster at Christmas when Jason twisted everything I said about the company's marketing strategy, I started recording just to keep my own sanity. To make sure I wasn't misremembering things when he would claim I said something. I didn't. Those recordings could be gold, Maya said, but be careful. This just got a lot more complicated than family drama. As I left Evergreen, my phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Jason says you're refusing the family meeting? Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I stared at my sister's message in disbelief. Jason was already spinning his narrative. I typed back, never said I wouldn't come. Of course I'll be there. Claire's response was immediate. Good. Mom's worried enough already. Our mother had passed 3 years ago after a long battle with cancer. It was her final wish that the family stay united. Jason knew exactly how to use that emotional leverage. Back at Horizon Innovations, the tech firm where I headed the marketing department, I found it impossible to focus. The Westridge connection kept nagging at me. I opened my laptop and began searching through Foster Tech's press releases about the partnership. Working through lunch again? Diana Reeves, our CEO, paused by my desk. Just catching up on family. Business? I said vaguely. Diana's eyes narrowed slightly. She'd been a mentor since I joined Horizon, and she had an uncanny ability to read between the lines. Everything okay with Ethan's transition? It's complicated, I admitted. Family. Businesses always are. That's why I started my own company instead of joining my father's law firm, she said with a knowing smile. Sometimes the best way to honor family legacy is to forge your own path. I nodded, grateful for her understanding. Diana, have you ever heard anything about Westridge Development's business practices? A flicker of something, concern, recognition, crossed her face. Why do you ask? Just curious. They're partnering with my father-in-law's company. Westridge has a reputation, Diana said carefully, not one I'd want associated with my company. Their environmental record is problematic. That's what I'm afraid of. Diana studied me for a moment. Becca, whatever's happening with your family business, remember that integrity matters more than loyalty sometimes. The hard choices are usually the right ones. With that cryptic advice, she continued on her way, leaving me with an even stronger sense of unease. By the time I got home that evening, Ethan was already there, pacing our living room with barely contained energy. Jason called, he said without preamble. He's telling everyone you're manipulating me to abandon the family legacy. I know, Claire texted. I set down my bag, suddenly exhausted. Ethan, we need to talk about Westridge. His pacing stopped abruptly. What about it? Maya's investigating them for environmental violations. She thinks there's a connection to your decision to leave. Ethan's face went through a complex series of emotions before settling on resignation. He sank onto our couch, running a hand through his dark hair. I didn't want to involve you, he said finally. But yes, Westridge is a big part of why I'm leaving. Jason pushed through that partnership despite knowing about their record. There's more, though. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Tell me, I said, sitting beside him. The software Foster Tech is developing for them. It's designed to help circumvent environmental impact reporting requirements. Technically legal, but ethically. He trailed off. When I objected, Jason said I was being naive, that this is how business works. And your father? Dad doesn't know the details. Jason's been shielding him, saying it's better he has deniability if anything comes back on the company. The pieces were falling into place. So when you announced you were leaving, Jason assumed you had convinced me to take a moral stand, which threatened his plans. Ethan took my hand. I should have told you sooner. Why didn't you? I was trying to protect you. Jason can be vindictive when he feels threatened. I thought of the recordings stored in my cloud account, a year's worth of family meetings, business discussions, and casual conversations where Jason had repeatedly dismissed ethical concerns, twisted words, and manipulated Gerald and Claire. I think it's time we stop letting Jason control the narrative, I said. And I might have just what we need to do that. Ethan looked at me questioningly. I've been recording the family meetings. His eyes widened. Since when? Since Jason claimed I suggested cutting the children's foundation funding when I actually advocated increasing it. I needed to know I wasn't losing my mind when he kept rewriting history. Becca, those recordings, if they capture conversations about Westridge, they might be exactly what we need for Sunday's family meeting. I squeezed his hand. But first, we need to know exactly what we're dealing with. And I think I know who can help. The next morning, I met Zoe at Waterfront Park. At 28, my youngest sister was the family rebel. Creative, outspoken, and remarkably perceptive. Her freelance design work gave her an independence the rest of us sometimes envied. So big brother-in-law is on the warpath, she said, falling into step beside me along the river. Claire called me in tears last night, saying the family is falling apart because of you. And what do you think? I asked. Zoe snorted. I think Jason's terrified of losing control now that Ethan's out and Dad's stepping back. You're just a convenient scapegoat. Have you noticed anything strange about the Westridge deal? Her pace faltered slightly. Why do you ask? Maya's investigating them. There might be ethical issues with foster tech's involvement. Zoe was quiet. For a moment, watching a boat move slowly upriver. 2 weeks ago, I was at the office dropping off some branding materials. I overheard Jason on the phone with someone from Westridge. He said, and I quote, "The environmental concerns are handled. The software will make the data look compliant. Even if it isn't." I thought it was weird, but you didn't want to cause problems, I finished for her. Family loyalty is a hell of a drug, she said wryly. Plus, Jason's been pushing Dad to give me the board seat when Ethan leaves. I thought maybe I could do more good from the inside. Would you be willing to go on record about what you heard? Zoe stopped walking, turning to face me. This is serious, isn't it? Beyond family drama? I think so. Maya wouldn't be investigating otherwise. Dad will be devastated, she said quietly. This company is his life's work. I know. That's why we need to handle this carefully. I took a deep breath. I have recordings of the family meetings, including some discussions about Westridge. Before Sunday, I need to review them and understand what we're dealing with. I'll help, Zoe said firmly. And Becca, I'll back you up on Sunday. Jason doesn't get to rewrite history and blame you for his mess. Back home, I created a secure folder and began methodically reviewing the recordings from the past year. The first few meetings were benign: birthday celebrations, holiday planning, casual family dinners. But then I found it. A recording from 6 months ago, when Ethan had first raised concerns about the company's environmental policies. We have a responsibility to do better. Ethan's voice came through clearly. Our software could be helping. Companies improve sustainability, not just maximize profits. That's not what clients are paying for, Jason's dismissive reply followed. Besides, your wife's bleeding heart influence is showing. We're running a business, not a charity. Leave Becca out of this, Ethan had responded sharply. These are my concerns, based on actual environmental science. Boys, please, Gerald's tired voice intervened. This is a family dinner, not a board meeting. The conversation moved on, but the seed had been planted. Jason publicly linking me to Ethan's environmental concerns. 2 months later, another recording captured a heated discussion about the Westridge partnership. Their environmental record is atrocious, Ethan argued. We'd be helping them hide environmental violations. We'd be helping them streamline reporting, Jason countered smoothly. Everything we're doing is perfectly legal. Legal doesn't mean ethical? I heard my own voice interject. See what I mean, Dad? Jason again. Becca's turning this into a moral crusade. This deal could set the company up for the next decade. I listened to recording after recording, each one revealing Jason's calculated campaign to position me as an outsider undermining the family business, while simultaneously pushing forward with the ethically questionable Westridge partnership. The most damning evidence came from a recording just 3 weeks ago, a private conversation between Jason and Gerald that I'd accidentally captured when I left my phone in the study during a family dinner. Ethan's concerns about Westridge could cause problems, Jason said. If he connects the dots about how the reporting software actually works. The EPA requirements are excessive anyway, Gerald replied, sounding tired. As long as we're within the letter of the law. We are, Jason assured him quickly, but perception matters. If this gets out, especially with the board transition coming up. You think Ethan would go public? Gerald's voice was concerned. Not Ethan, Jason replied. But Becca? She's not family, not really. Her loyalty isn't to foster tech, and with her connections at Horizon and that journalist friend of hers. The recording continued, revealing Jason's plan to gradually isolate me from the family, positioning me as the reason for any potential fallout if the Westridge issues became public. By Saturday evening, I had compiled the key recordings and organized them chronologically. The pattern was undeniable. Jason had been systematically scapegoating me while pushing forward with questionable business practices. "This is worse than I thought," Ethan said, listening to the final recording. "He's been setting you up as the fall person all along. And manipulating your father in the process," I added. "Gerald trusts Jason completely." "Not after he hears these." Ethan's jaw was set in a way I rarely saw. "Becca, I'm sorry. I had no idea how far this had gone." "It's not your fault." I closed my laptop. "The question now is how we handle tomorrow. Jason's called this meeting to publicly blame me for breaking up the family. If we play these recordings, it could destroy the family anyway." Ethan finished my thought. "Dad's health isn't great. This kind of betrayal from Jason." I nodded, understanding the impossible position we were in. "Maybe there's another way. What if we give Jason a chance to come clean first?" "You think he would?" "No," I admitted. "But it gives us the moral high ground. We confront him privately before the meeting, show him what we have, and give him the option to tell the truth himself." Ethan considered this. "And if he refuses?" "Then we have no choice but to play the recordings. For your father's sake, for the company's sake, and for everyone who could be affected by what Foster Tech is doing with Westridge." "I'll call him," Ethan decided. "Ask him to meet us at the Lookout before everyone else arrives." The Lookout was the family's vacation home on the Oregon coast, where Gerald had called the family meeting. Isolated and private, it had been the site of many family milestones over the years. Tomorrow, it would witness perhaps the most difficult confrontation of all. That night, I barely slept. The weight of what we were about to do, potentially tear apart a family, expose a respected company, challenge a narrative Jason had been crafting for years, left me staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios in my head. Next to me, Ethan's breathing was equally restless. "Are we doing the right thing?" he whispered into the darkness. I turned to face him, though I could barely make out his features in the dim light. "I don't know if there is a right thing here, but letting Jason continue manipulating your father and the company can't be the answer." "I've been thinking about something my mom used to say," Ethan replied, his voice soft. "She always told us that family isn't just about blood or loyalty. It's about truth. A family built on lies, she'd say, is no family at all." His mother's wisdom hung in the air between us. Before her death, she had been the moral compass of the Foster family, the one person who could check Jason's ambitions with a single disapproving look. "She would be proud of you," I said, reaching for his hand in the darkness, "for standing up for what's right, even when it's hard." "I hope so," he murmured. "I just wish she were here now. She'd know exactly what to do." As dawn broke, we packed the car in silence, the laptop with the recordings secured in my bag. The drive to the coast stretched before us, 3 hours to prepare for the confrontation that might change everything. The coastal highway stretched before us, waves crashing against the cliffs to our left as we made our way to the Lookout. Ethan drove in silence, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I kept checking my phone, half expecting Jason to cancel our pre-meeting, to somehow sense the trap we were laying. "He agreed too easily," I said, breaking the silence. "Jason never does anything without calculating all angles first." Ethan nodded, his eyes fixed on the road. "He thinks he's walking into an easy win. You and me, isolated, before everyone else arrives. He probably sees it as an opportunity to intimidate us into submission. Or to get his version on record? Before the family meeting," I added. The thought made me reach for my phone, double-checking that the recording app was working properly. One-party consent meant I could legally record our conversation with Jason, but only if the technology cooperated. We rounded a curve, and the Lookout appeared in the distance, a modernist structure of glass and wood perched on the edge of a cliff, the Foster family's pride and joy. Gerald had built it during the company's early success days, a symbol of his achievement and a gathering place for the family. I'd always found it beautiful but intimidating, much like the family itself. "Jason's already here," Ethan observed, nodding toward the black Tesla parked in the driveway. My stomach tightened. "Earlier than we agreed." "Control tactic," Ethan muttered, pulling in beside the Tesla. "He always does this. Arrives early. To establish home field advantage." We sat for a moment, gathering ourselves for what was to come. I reached for the laptop bag, but Ethan put his hand on mine. "Let me talk first," he said. "He's my brother. And this isn't just about defending you, it's about stopping him from corrupting everything my parents built." The determination in his voice was something I hadn't heard in years. The constant pressure of working under Jason's shadow had gradually worn down my husband's confidence, his passion. Now, I saw a glimpse of the man I'd fallen in love with. Principled, strong, unwavering. "Of course," I agreed. "But remember, we need him to admit to the Westridge situation on this recording, not just his campaign against me." Ethan nodded, then leaned over and kissed me briefly. "Whatever happens in there, we're in this together." Jason was waiting in the great room, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Pacific. He turned as we entered, his expression carefully neutral. "You're late," he said by way of greeting. "Actually, you're early," Ethan replied, his voice remarkably calm. "Thanks for meeting us before everyone arrives." Jason's eyes flickered to the laptop bag I carried. "What's that? Presentation materials for your character assassination?" "Evidence," I said simply, setting the bag down but not opening it yet. "We thought it might be better to speak privately first." Jason laughed, the sound hollow in the cavernous room. "Evidence of what exactly? How you've turned my brother against his own family? How you've been feeding information to that reporter friend of yours? Please enlighten me." "That's not why I'm leaving the company," Ethan said, stepping forward. "And you know it. This is about Westridge." The slight narrowing of Jason's eyes was the only indication that the name had struck a nerve. He recovered quickly, moving to the wet bar and pouring himself a drink. He didn't offer us one. "Westridge is the biggest opportunity Foster Tech has had in a decade," he said smoothly. "But sure, let's blame your departure on a lucrative partnership, rather than admit your wife has other loyalties." "Environmental violations, Jason," Ethan pressed. "The software we're developing helps them hide environmental violations. That's what this is really about." Jason sipped his drink, his composure impressive even as the accusation hung in the air. "The software helps streamline reporting processes within legal parameters. If you had bothered to actually understand the project instead of listening to whatever conspiracy theories your wife has been feeding you—" "I heard you," I interrupted. "3 weeks ago, talking to Gerald in his study, about how the software makes the data look compliant even if it isn't. Your words, not mine." For a fraction of a second, uncertainty crossed Jason's face, but it vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. "Eavesdropping now, Becca? How desperate." "Not eavesdropping," I replied, reaching for my laptop bag. "Recording." The shift in the atmosphere was immediate. Jason set down his glass, his casual demeanor evaporating. "Recording family conversations? That's a new low, even for you." "Actually, I've been recording family meetings for over a year," I admitted, powering up the laptop. "Ever since you twisted my words about the Children's Foundation funding, I needed protection from your manipulation." "That's illegal," Jason snapped, lawyer instincts kicking in. "Oregon is a one-party consent state," Ethan reminded him. "Perfectly. Legal as long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded." Jason's jaw tightened. "What exactly do you think you have?" Rather than answer, I pressed play on the first recording, the family dinner where Jason had first linked me to Ethan's environmental concerns, planting the seed of my alleged interference. Jason listened, his expression hardening with each word, when his own voice came through clearly. Besides, your wife's bleeding heart influence is showing. His eyes darted between us, calculating. I stopped the playback. That was 6 months ago, the beginning of your campaign to paint me as the problem. One conversation, Jason dismissed, though less confidently. Hardly evidence of a campaign. We have more, Ethan said. A lot. More. Every family meeting, every dinner discussion about the company, your systematic efforts to isolate Becca, to blame her for my concerns about the company's direction. And this, I added, pulling up the accidental recording from Gerald's study. Jason's voice filled the room. But Becca? She's not family. Not really. Her loyalty isn't to Foster Tech. The color drained from Jason's face as he heard himself laying out his strategy to use me as a scapegoat if the Westridge issues became public. When the recording ended, the silence in the room was deafening. "Where did you get that?" he finally asked, voice dangerously quiet. "My phone was in the study," I explained. "I didn't realize it was still recording when I left to help Claire." "In the kitchen. But it captured everything, including your plan to blame me if the Westridge deal went south." Jason moved suddenly, reaching for the laptop. Ethan stepped between us, his stance protective. "Don't," he warned his brother. For a tense moment, I thought Jason might actually try to physically wrest the computer away. Instead, he retreated. A step, running a hand through his perfectly groomed hair. The first sign of genuine distress I'd ever seen from him. "What do you want?" he asked, voice cold. "Money? A position at Horizon for Ethan?" "We want the truth," Ethan said firmly. "At today's family meeting, you're going to withdraw your accusations against Becca. You're going to admit that my leaving has nothing to do with her influence and everything to do with the company's ethical direction under your guidance." Jason laughed bitterly. "And destroy everything I've built? The Westridge deal is worth millions, Ethan. Millions that will secure the company's future, Dad's legacy." "A legacy built on lies isn't worth preserving," I interjected. Jason's eyes narrowed as they fixed on me. "Always the moral compass, aren't you, Becca? So quick to judge." He turned to Ethan. "Did your perfect wife tell you she knew about the Westridge environmental issues months ago? That her precious CEO, Diana Reeves, tried to get the same contract?" The accusation caught me off guard. "What? That's not true." "No?" Jason pulled out his phone, tapping through screens before holding it up triumphantly. "Horizon submitted a bid for the Westridge software project. They lost because they insisted on environmental compliance features that would have exposed previous violations. Diana Reeves knows exactly what Westridge wanted the software to do." I stared at the proposal on his screen, recognizing Diana's signature and Horizon's letterhead. "I had no idea," I said truthfully, looking at Ethan. "I wasn't involved in that bid." "Convenient?" Jason sneered, pocketing his phone. "But it doesn't change the fact that your company wanted the same contract you're now condemning us for taking. The only difference is we won." "The difference," Ethan said firmly, "is that we would have done it ethically. There's a way to build this software within legal and moral boundaries, Jason. You chose not to." Jason moved to the window, staring out at the ocean for a long moment. When he turned back, his expression had changed from defensive to calculating, a shift I'd seen before in business negotiations. He was regrouping, finding a new angle. "Those recordings," he said finally. "What do you actually plan to do with them?" "That depends on you," I replied carefully. "We'd prefer not to play them for the family. Gerald doesn't need to hear how you've been manipulating him." "So noble," Jason scoffed, but I could see he was considering his options. "And what about Westridge? Planning to take that to your journalist friend?" "Maya's already investigating," I admitted. "But there's a difference between her finding evidence independently and us handing over family recordings." Jason nodded. slowly, processing this. So, if I cooperate at this family meeting, those recordings stay private, including the Westridge discussions? The family recordings stay private, Ethan confirmed, but the Westridge situation needs to be addressed properly. The company needs to fix the software, make it compliant with environmental regulations. Jason barked a laugh. That would violate our contract and cost millions. Less than an EPA investigation and public scandal, I pointed out. A car engine sounded outside, the first of the family arriving for the meeting. Jason glanced toward the driveway, then back at us. Decision made. I'll tell Dad and Claire I was wrong about your influence over Ethan, he conceded reluctantly. But Westridge is more complicated. I can't just unilaterally change our approach without board approval. Then we'll get board approval, Ethan said. Today. Jason shook his head. Dad won't go for it. He's counting on the Westridge money for his retirement. He'll go for it when he understands the alternative, I said firmly. Gerald built this company on integrity. He wouldn't want this, no matter the profit. More cars were arriving now, voices carrying from the driveway. Jason straightened his tie, mask slipping back into place. Fine. I'll support a review of the Westridge contract, he agreed tersely. But not because of your threats. Because it's best for the company. Of course, Ethan said, not bothering to hide his skepticism. Whatever helps you sleep at night, brother. Jason moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. I want those recordings deleted after this meeting. All of them. I exchanged a glance with Ethan. We'll delete the family conversations. I agreed carefully. But I'm keeping the Westridge material until the situation is resolved properly. Jason's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. We have a deal then, for now. As he left to greet the arriving family, Ethan turned to me. You don't trust him. Not for a second, I confirmed, closing the laptop. But this gives us time to address Westridge legitimately, through the board, without tearing the family apart today. He'll try to find another way to discredit you, Ethan warned. Jason never admits defeat. I know. That's why I'm keeping copies of everything, I said, patting the laptop. Insurance. The lookout was filling with family now, Claire's voice carrying from the entryway, Gerald's deeper tones responding, Zoe's distinctive laugh. I took Ethan's hand, drawing strength from his steady presence. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be. The family meeting began like many before it, with casual conversation over coffee and pastries in the great room. Gerald sat in his usual chair by the fireplace, Claire perched on the arm of Jason's seat, Zoe sprawled comfortably on the bow floor. Ethan and I took the love seat, slightly apart from the others, a seating arrangement that didn't escape my notice. Already the physical space reflected the emotional divisions Jason had cultivated. Well, Gerald said finally, setting down his coffee cup. I suppose we should get to the purpose of this gathering. His eyes, still sharp despite his 70 years, fixed on Ethan. Son, your decision to leave the company has been difficult for all of us to understand. I know, Dad, Ethan replied, and I'm sorry for that. But my reasons are professional, not personal. Jason seems to think otherwise, Gerald continued, glancing at his son-in-law. He's concerned that outside influences might be affecting your judgment. All eyes turned to me. I felt the weight of their collective gaze but kept my expression neutral, waiting for Jason to fulfill his promise. Jason cleared his throat. Actually, I may have overreacted to Ethan's decision. The words seemed physically painful for him to speak. After reflection, I recognized that Becca hasn't been turning Ethan against the family. His choices are his own. Claire's head whipped toward her husband, shock evident on her face. This clearly wasn't the script she'd been prepared for. That's Quite a reversal, Jason, Gerald said carefully, studying his son-in-law with newfound suspicion. Just yesterday you were convinced Becca was the source of all our problems. Jason forced a smile. I let my disappointment cloud my judgment. Ethan's departure is a professional decision, as he said. Well, Gerald said, looking relieved but confused. I appreciate your honesty, Jason. And I hope this means we can move forward as a family, even if Ethan's professional path is taking him elsewhere. Actually, Ethan interjected, my decision to leave is connected to a company matter we need to discuss, the Westridge partnership. The atmosphere in the room immediately tensed. Claire shifted uncomfortably, Zoe sat up straighter, and Gerald's bushy eyebrows drew together. What about it? He asked. Ethan looked at Jason, giving him the opportunity to take the lead as promised. Jason hesitated, then spoke with obvious reluctance. There may be concerns about the environmental compliance aspects of the software we're developing for them, he admitted. Concerns? Zoe echoed, her tone making it clear she already knew more than she was letting on. What kind of concerns? Jason shot her an irritated look before continuing. The reporting features might not be as robust as they could be. Ethan raised this issue months ago, and in retrospect, I should have taken his concerns more seriously. Not robust? Ethan challenged. Jason, tell them the truth. The software is designed to help Westridge hide environmental violations. Gerald's face darkened. Is this true, Jason? Backed into a corner, Jason attempted damage control. The software operates within legal parameters, Gerald. Every feature was approved by our legal team. Your legal team, Claire corrected quietly. You pushed the contract review through without the usual oversight. All eyes turned to Claire, surprised by her contradiction of her husband. She flushed, but continued. I saw the paperwork, Jason. You circumvented the standard review process, said it was a time-sensitive opportunity that couldn't wait. Jason stared at his wife, genuine shock breaking through his composed facade. You never mentioned seeing those documents. I didn't think I needed to, Claire replied, a hint of steel entering her voice. I trusted you. The past tense hung in the air between them. Gerald stood suddenly, his imposing figure drawing everyone's attention. Enough, dancing around this. Jason, I want a straight answer. Is Foster Tech developing software that helps Westridge circumvent environmental regulations? Jason hesitated, caught between his promise to us and his instinct for self-preservation. The software creates efficiencies in reporting that benefit Westridge's bottom line. That's not an answer, Gerald snapped. Yes or no? Yes, Ethan answered for his brother. That's exactly what it does. And that's why I'm leaving. I can't be part of a company that prioritizes profit over ethical considerations. Gerald's face fell, aging years in moments. He sank back into his chair, the proud patriarch suddenly looking every day of his 70 years. I built this company to create useful tools to solve problems, he said quietly, not to help others cheat the system. It's not cheating, Jason insisted. It's working within the gray areas of regulation. Every tech company does it. Not every company, I interjected. And gray areas is a generous description for helping hide violations that could harm communities. Of course you'd say that, Jason shot back, control slipping. Working for Horizon with its holier-than-thou reputation while simultaneously. Stop, Claire interrupted, standing up. Jason, this isn't about Becca or Horizon. It's about what you've done with Dad's company. She turned to Gerald. Dad, I had no idea about the nature of the Westridge contract. None of us did except Jason and apparently Ethan. And Zoe, Jason added spitefully. She overheard me discussing it weeks ago and said nothing. Zoe didn't flinch under the sudden attention. I was gathering facts before making accusations, she said calmly. Unlike some people who point fingers without evidence. The family dynamics were shifting before my eyes, alliances reforming, old patterns breaking. I caught Ethan's eye and saw both hope and concern there. This confrontation was necessary but painful, ripping open wounds that had been festering beneath the surface of family harmony. Gerald cleared his throat. The question now is what we do about it. The Westridge contract is signed. The software is in development. We modify it, Ethan said promptly. Make it compliant with both the letter and spirit of environmental regulations. Yes, it might cost us the Westridge contract, but it's the right thing to do. And legally prudent, I added. Maya Chen at the Portland Tribune is already investigating Westridge. If Foster Tech is implicated in helping them hide violations, the reputational damage could be devastating. Jason shot me a venomous look. Convenient timing for your journalist friend to be investigating our client. Maya's investigation has nothing to do with me, I said truthfully. Environmental reporting is her beat. Westridge has a history of violations that put them on her radar long before this conversation. Gerald held up a hand, silencing the brewing argument. Enough. What's done is done. The question is how we fix it. He turned to Jason. You got us into this mess. What's your proposal for getting us out? Jason straightened, recognizing the lifeline Gerald was throwing him. We can renegotiate the contract, position the software revisions as enhancements rather than corrections. It will cost us some profit margin, but we can retain the client. If they're willing, Ethan pointed out. Westridge specifically wanted software that would help them skirt regulations. They may not be interested in a compliant version. Then we walk away, Gerald said firmly, surprising everyone. We return their deposit and cancel the contract. Dad, be reasonable, Jason protested. That would cost millions, not to mention potential lawsuits for breach of contract. I am being reasonable, Gerald replied, a hint of his former authority returning. This company was built on creating software that helps people do better, not helping them hide wrongdoing. If we've strayed from that mission, it's time to course correct. Claire moved to stand beside her father. I agree with Dad. We cannot let this continue, no matter the cost. Jason looked around the room, seeing the tide turning against him. His gaze finally settled on me, cold and calculating. This is your doing, he said quietly. You've turned them all against me, just like you did with Ethan. No, Jason, Claire responded before I could. You did this yourself. Stop blaming Becca for your bad decisions. The room fell silent, the weight of Claire's rebuke hanging in the air. Jason had lost his strongest ally, and he knew it. Gerald sighed heavily. We'll need a formal board vote to change direction on the Westridge contract. Jason, prepare the necessary documentation for us to review the situation and make an informed decision. And if I refuse? Jason challenged, a last desperate stand. Then I'll ask for your resignation, Gerald said simply. I'm still majority shareholder, son. Don't force my hand. The ultimatum landed like a physical blow. Jason's composure finally cracked, revealing the fury beneath. This company will collapse without me. The Westridge deal is just one of dozens. I've negotiated that operate in these so-called gray areas. Our entire international division runs on similar principles. His admission silenced the room. Gerald's face paled as he absorbed the implications of what his son-in-law was saying. Sure. How deep does this go? He asked quietly. Jason laughed bitterly. Deep enough that unwinding it all would take years and millions in lost revenue. Is that really what you want for your legacy, Gerald? Financial ruin in the name of some abstract, ethical standard? I watched Gerald struggle with this revelation, saw the conflict between the principled man who had founded Foster Tech and the pragmatic businessman who had built it into a success. Before he could respond, Ethan spoke up. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, Dad. We can address the issues systematically, starting with Westridge. The company can course correct without self-destructing. Ethan's right, Zoe added. And I'm willing to help. My board seat, if you still want me to take it, could focus specifically on ethical compliance going forward. Gerald looked between his children, something like hope flickering across his weary features. You'd stay involved, Ethan? Help us fix this? As a consultant, yes, Ethan agreed. Not as an employee, but I won't abandon the company to sink or swim with these issues. The tension in the room gradually shifted from confrontational to constructive. Plans began forming: a board meeting to review the Westridge contract, an audit of similar arrangements, a pathway forward that balanced ethical considerations with business realities. Through it all, Jason remained silent, his influence diminishing with each suggestion that passed without his input. Claire had moved away from him physically and emotionally, standing instead with her siblings near their father. When the practical discussions concluded, Gerald addressed the elephant in the room. And what about the personal accusations that prompted this meeting? Jason's claims about Becca's influence? All eyes turned to Jason, who managed a tight smile. As I said earlier, I was mistaken. Becca isn't responsible for Ethan's decisions. Good, Gerald said firmly. Because family is family, Jason. Becca is as much a foster as any of us now. I won't have these divisions. Jason nodded stiffly, accepting defeat on this front at least. But as the family meeting moved toward its conclusion, I caught his eyes tracking the laptop bag I'd set aside. The recordings that had prompted his partial confession remained a threat he wouldn't forget. As the family dispersed, Gerald and Zoe heading to the kitchen to prepare lunch, Claire retreating to the deck for some air, Jason cornered me away from the others. This isn't over, he said quietly, voice pitched so only I could hear. You think you've won, but you've just declared war. Those recordings? Two can play at that game. It doesn't have to be war, Jason, I replied, keeping my voice level. You could try something new, like honesty. He smiled coldly. Honesty is overrated in business and in family. You'll learn that eventually. Before I could respond, Ethan appeared at my side. Everything okay here? Perfectly fine, Jason said, stepping back. Just clearing the air with my sister-in-law. As he walked away, Ethan slipped his arm around my waist. What was that about? A warning, I said quietly. He's not done fighting. Are you worried? I considered the question, watching. Jason joined Claire on the deck, his posture conciliatory, already working to rebuild his influence. Yes, I admitted. But we have something he doesn't. What's that? The truth, I said simply. And each other. Ethan pulled me closer. That'll have to be enough. But as I watched Jason speaking intently to Claire, her posture gradually softening, I wondered if the truth alone would be sufficient against someone so skilled at creating his own reality. The recordings had forced today's confrontation, but Jason's parting words echoed in my mind. Two can play at that game. The battle for the Foster family's future had only just begun. The drive back to Portland was quieter than the journey to the lookout. Ethan focused on the winding coastal highway, while I stared out at the ocean, processing everything that had happened. The family meeting had gone better than expected in some ways. Jason had been forced to retract his accusations against me, and Gerald now knew about the questionable Westridge partnership. But Jason's parting threat lingered like a storm cloud on the horizon. We should tell Maya what happened, I said finally, breaking the silence. She needs to know the board is reviewing the Westridge contract. Ethan nodded, eyes still on the road. Will that affect her investigation? It might give Foster Tech some breathing room if she knows they're addressing the issue internally, I replied. But it won't stop her from reporting on Westridge's past violations. The public has a right to know. Jason will see that as another betrayal, Ethan pointed out. I know, but I'd rather Maya have accurate information than work with half-truths. I turned to look at him. Besides, Jason already thinks I'm feeding her information. Might as well be honest information. Ethan reached over to squeeze my hand. You're right, and I'm done worrying about Jason's reactions. He brought this on himself. We stopped for coffee at a roadside diner, needing both caffeine and space, before returning to our normal lives. The place was nearly empty, just a few truckers at the counter and an elderly couple by the window. What happens now? I asked as we slid into a booth. With the company, I mean. Ethan stirred his coffee absently. Dad will call an emergency board meeting, probably tomorrow. Jason will try to minimize the Westridge issues, present options that protect the contract while making superficial changes to the software. And you? I've promised to consult, to help them find ethical solutions. He looked up at me. That doesn't change my plans to start my own firm. If anything, this confirms I'm making the right choice. I nodded, relieved. Part of me had worried that Gerald's plea would pull Ethan back into the family business full-time, back under Jason's influence. What about Claire? I asked. She surprised me today. Me too, Ethan admitted. I've never seen her stand up to Jason like that. The question is whether it will last or if he'll win her back over. He's already working on it, I reminded him, thinking of the intense conversation we'd glimpsed on the deck. Claire's been under his influence for a decade. That doesn't disappear overnight. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. News on Westridge. Need to talk. Evergreen at 7? I showed Ethan the message. Something's happening. You should go, he said. I'll head to the office, start gathering documentation on the Westridge software specifications. Dad will need it for the board meeting. 2 hours later, I was back at Evergreen Cafe, watching Maya hurry in from the rain, laptop bag clutched protectively against her chest. She spotted me and made a beeline for our corner table. The EPA is opening an investigation into Westridge, she announced, without preamble, sliding into the seat across from me. Anonymous tip with documentation of at least 3 major violations in the past year. My heart raced. When? The notification went out this afternoon. My source at the EPA gave me a heads up. Maya studied my face. You don't seem surprised. What happened at the family meeting? I gave her a condensed version of the confrontation at the lookout, Jason's reluctant confession, Gerald's dismay, the decision to review the Westridge contract. So Foster Tech is backing away from the problematic software? She asked, taking notes. They're reviewing it, I clarified. There will be a board vote, probably tomorrow. But with Gerald and Claire both opposed to continuing as planned, I think the outcome is clear. Maya nodded slowly. That's good timing, with the EPA investigation starting. Distance between Foster Tech and Westridge could save your family's company from being dragged into the scandal. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Maya, the timing is too perfect. The EPA investigation launching the same day we confronted Jason about Westridge? She frowned. You think someone in your family tipped off the EPA? Not my family, I said, the realization crystallizing. Jason. Why would Jason trigger an investigation into his own client? I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Because it changes the game. Now it's not about Foster Tech choosing to correct an ethical lapse. It's about distancing themselves from a client under federal investigation. It shifts the narrative from internal reform to crisis management. Which Jason would be uniquely positioned to lead, Maya finished the thought. Damn, that's cold. Using a federal investigation as a power play. It's exactly his style, I said, making a strategic sacrifice to maintain control of the larger game. Maya closed her notebook. What will you do? Warn Ethan and Gerald. They need to know what they're walking into at tomorrow's board meeting. I checked my watch. But first, I should talk to Diana at Horizon. If Jason was telling the truth about our company bidding for the Westridge contract, she might have insights we need. Though it was after hours, Diana was still in her office when I arrived at Horizon Innovations. The glass walls of her corner space offered a view of Portland's downtown skyline, lights glimmering through the persistent drizzle. "Becca," she looked up from her computer. "I didn't expect to see you today. Everything okay?" I closed the door behind me. "Did Horizon bid on the Westridge software contract last year?" Diana's expression shifted from surprise to wariness. "Yes, we did. Why?" "Why didn't you tell me when I asked about Westridge's reputation?" She leaned back in her chair, studying me. "Because it wasn't relevant to your question? You asked about their business practices, not our history with them." "It became relevant when my family company won the contract," I pointed out. "A contract you apparently knew was ethically questionable." Diana sighed, gesturing for me to sit. "Becca, we bid on the contract with a completely different approach than what Foster Tech agreed to. Our proposal included full environmental compliance features, which is precisely why we lost. Westridge wanted software that would help them minimize reporting requirements. And you didn't think to warn me? My husband works for Foster Tech. My father-in-law founded it." "It wasn't my place to interfere in your family business," Diana said firmly. "Besides, by the time I realized Foster Tech had taken the contract, the deal was done. What purpose would it have served to tell you then?" I wanted to argue, but her logic was sound. Still, the omission stung. "The EPA is investigating Westridge," I told her. "Announced today." Diana nodded, unsurprised. "I heard. The industry grapevine works quickly. How exposed is Foster Tech?" "That depends on the board meeting tomorrow. We're pushing to modify the software, make it compliant." "Smart move," Diana approved. "Cut ties before the investigation expands." "You think it will?" Diana's expression turned grave. "Westridge isn't just one company, Becca. It's part of a conglomerate with tentacles in development projects across the Northwest. The EPA won't stop at surface violations. They'll dig until they find the roots." Her words sent a chill through me. Jason, my brother-in-law, has negotiated deals with Westridge subsidiaries too. He admitted the Westridge approach is just one of dozens operating in what he calls gray areas. Diana leaned forward, suddenly intense. "Then Foster Tech needs to conduct a full internal audit immediately, before the investigation expands. If your brother-in-law has created a pattern of enabling environmental violations, the company could face serious consequences. Criminal charges? Potentially, if the violations are severe enough and there's evidence of knowing facilitation." Diana's voice softened. "Becca, I understand this is your family we're talking about. But as someone who values both your career and your integrity, I need to be clear. Distance yourself from this situation professionally, even as you help your husband navigate it personally." "You're worried about Horizon being implicated?" "I'm worried about you being caught in the crossfire," she corrected. "Your position here is secure, but your reputation is at stake if you're seen as having conflicts of interest." I left Diana's office with more questions than answers, my mind racing. If Jason had indeed built a network of questionable contracts similar to Westridge, the problem was far bigger than one software project. The entire Foster Tech International division might be compromised. I tried calling Ethan, but got his voicemail. "Call me as soon as you can," I said after the beep. "I think the Westridge situation is worse than we thought, and I think Jason may have tipped off the EPA himself." Night had fallen by the time I reached our townhouse. Ethan's car wasn't in the driveway, which was unusual. He should have been home from the office hours ago. I tried his cell again, straight to voicemail. Inside, the house was dark and quiet. I flipped on lights, checked messages, sent another. Text. Nothing. A nagging worry began to build as I heated leftover soup for dinner, eating alone at the kitchen island while repeatedly checking my phone. At 9, I called Foster Tech's security desk. "This is Rebecca Mitchell, Ethan Mitchell's wife. Is he still in the building?" "Let me check, Mrs. Mitchell." A pause. "No, Mr. Mitchell signed out at 5:45 p.m. 3 hours ago. Where was he?" I tried Gerald next. "Have you heard from Ethan tonight?" "Not since we left the lookout," he replied, concern immediately evident in his voice. "Is everything all right?" "He's not home, not answering his phone. It's probably nothing, but it's not like him," Gerald finished my thought. "I'll make some calls, see if anyone knows where he might be. Have you tried Zoe?" "Not yet. I'll call her now." Zoe hadn't heard from Ethan either. Neither had any of his friends I could reach. By 10 o'clock, genuine fear had replaced worry. This wasn't like Ethan at all. No matter how busy, he always let me know his whereabouts. My phone rang. An unknown number. I pounced on it. "Hello, Ethan?" "Becca." The voice froze my blood. "Jason." "Where's Ethan?" I demanded. "Having an important conversation," Jason replied smoothly. "One that's long overdue." "If you've hurt him—" "Please," he cut me off. "He's my brother. Despite what you think of me, I'm not a monster." "Then, let me talk to him." "He's busy reviewing some interesting footage I've acquired. CCTV from the Horizon parking garage, showing a certain CEO handing an envelope to a Tribune reporter 3 weeks ago, right around when the Westridge investigation began." My mind raced. Diana meeting with Maya? It wasn't impossible. They moved in the same professional circles. But Jason was implying something more nefarious. "What's your point, Jason?" "My point is that while you've been collecting recordings of family meetings, I've been gathering evidence of corporate espionage. Horizon using a journalist to target a Foster Tech client? The board will find that very interesting." "That's absurd," I protested, though doubt crept in. Diana had bid on the Westridge contract, lost to Foster Tech, and now Westridge was under investigation following Maya's reporting. From a certain angle, it could look suspicious. "Is it?" Jason asked silkily. "Ethan seems quite troubled by the footage. Perhaps you should join us and explain." "The Waterfront Marriott, room 1542. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, mind whirling. Jason was manipulating the situation clearly. But what if there was something to his allegations? What if Diana had been less than forthcoming about her connections to Maya's investigation? I grabbed my coat and keys, then hesitated. Jason was drawing me into another confrontation, this time on his terms, in a location of his choosing. I needed backup. I called Maya. "Something's happened. Jason has Ethan at the Waterfront Marriott. He's claiming to have footage of Diana meeting with you, suggesting corporate espionage against Westridge." "What?" Maya sounded genuinely shocked. "I've never had a private meeting with Diana Reeves in my life. We've been at the same industry events, but that's it." Relief flooded through me. So it's a bluff. Must be. Or doctored footage of some kind. Maya's voice hardened. "This is getting dangerous, Becca. You shouldn't go there alone." "I have to. He has Ethan. Then I'm coming with you, and I'm bringing my own recording equipment. If Jason wants to play with fabricated evidence, let's make sure we have the real thing." 20 minutes later, we met in the Marriott lobby. Maya looked different, more intimidating somehow, in a sleek raincoat with professional recording equipment disguised as ordinary accessories. "Wireless microphone," she explained, handing me what looked like a stylish lapel pin. "It will transmit to my phone. If Jason tries anything shady, we'll have it documented." "Thank you," I said, pinning it to my collar. "I don't know what to expect up there." "Expect manipulation," Maya advised grimly. "That's Jason's whole playbook." The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt interminable. When we reached room 1542, I squared my shoulders and knocked firmly. Jason opened the door, his expression shifting from confidence to wariness when he saw Maya. This was a private family matter. Where journalists are being accused of corporate espionage? I don't think so, Maya replied coolly, pushing past him into the suite. Ethan sat on the edge of a sofa, looking exhausted but unharmed. He stood when he saw me. Becca, I'm sorry. My phone died, and Jason insisted we talk privately. Talk about what? I demanded, moving to Ethan's side. Jason gestured to a laptop on the coffee table. About this interesting footage an associate provided. Security camera from the Horizon garage dated exactly 2 days before Ms. Chen's first article mentioning Westridge appeared. The video showed a parking structure I recognized as Horizon's. A car pulled up, Diana's distinctive electric Audi. A second car arrived moments later, and a woman emerged. The angle made it difficult to be certain, but she was approximately Maya's height and build. That's not me, Maya said immediately. I drive a blue Subaru, not whatever that sedan is. And I've never met Diana Reeves in a parking garage. Convenient denial, Jason remarked. But the timing is suspicious, wouldn't you say? Horizon loses a bid to Foster Tech, and suddenly the winning client is under investigation by a journalist with ties to Becca. Friendship isn't a tie in the way you're implying, I snapped. And this footage proves nothing. You can't even clearly see who that is. Perhaps not definitively, Jason conceded. But it raises questions the board will want answered before making any decisions about Westridge. Ethan stepped forward. This is what you dragged me here for? Grainy footage that proves nothing, in some desperate attempt to deflect from your own misconduct? I'm protecting the company, Jason insisted. If Horizon is using journalistic connections to sabotage our clients. Oh, please, Maya interrupted. My investigation into Westridge began 6 months ago, long before I knew of any connection to Foster Tech. I have dated research notes and interview transcripts to prove it. Jason's confidence wavered slightly. Nevertheless, the appearance of impropriety is exactly what you're trying to create, I finished for him. Just like you tried to create the appearance that I was manipulating Ethan against the family. It didn't work then, and it won't work now. We'll let the board decide, Jason said, regaining his composure. Tomorrow's meeting should be enlightening. Yes, it should, Ethan agreed, a sudden steel in his voice. Especially when I share what I found in the office tonight. Jason's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out a thumb drive. After you left the lookout, I went to the office to prepare documentation for the board meeting. I wanted to understand exactly how the Westridge software was designed to circumvent reporting requirements. That's proprietary information, Jason protested. I'm still a board member, Ethan reminded him. I have every right to review it. What I didn't expect to find was evidence that you were the one who tipped off the EPA about Westridge. Jason's face remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. Your company email, Ethan continued, drafting an anonymous tip, saving it to an external account. Sloppy, Jason. You're usually more careful. I don't know what you're talking about, Jason insisted, but his denial lacked conviction. Why? I asked, genuinely curious. Why trigger an investigation into your own client? Jason's composure cracked slightly. You think you've won, don't you? Turn the family against me with your recordings? This is business, Becca. Sometimes sacrifices are necessary. Sacrificing Westridge to save yourself, Maya observed. Throwing them under the bus before they could implicate Foster Tech. To protect the company, Jason corrected sharply. If Westridge went down and took us with them, the damage would be catastrophic. This way, we control the narrative. Cut ties proactively, position ourselves as responsible corporate citizens. With you as the hero who swoops in to manage the crisis, Ethan added bitterly. The crisis you created. Jason shrugged, dropping the pretense. Someone had to take control of the situation after your sanctimonious display at the lookout. Gerald would have dithered, tried to do the right thing, while our stock plummeted. This way, we get ahead of the story. By throwing an ethics bomb. That could damage dozens of companies, including your own, I said, appalled. Do you have any idea how many people could lose their jobs if Westridge faces severe penalties? Collateral damage, Jason dismissed. The business world isn't a place for the faint-hearted, Becca. Something your husband never understood. Maya had been quietly recording the conversation with her phone. Now she spoke up. So just to clarify, Mr. Warren, you're admitting to orchestrating an anonymous tip to the EPA about your own client, Westridge Development, in order to control the narrative when their environmental violations became public. Jason realized too late that he'd been speaking without his usual caution. I never said that. Actually, you did, Maya replied, holding up her phone. And it's on record now. Jason lunged for the phone, but Ethan stepped between them. Enough, Jason. It's over. We have the evidence, both of the Westridge software issues and your manipulation of the EPA investigation. There's no scenario where you come out of tomorrow's board meeting still in control. For a moment, I thought Jason might actually try to physically overpower Ethan to get to Maya's phone. Instead, he stepped back, straightening his tie as he visibly recalculated his options. You think this ends with me? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I'm not the only one who understands how the game is played. Half the board operates the same way I do. They won't thank you for shining a light on business practices they've profited from for years. That's their problem, Ethan replied. I'm done covering for corrupt practices, and after tomorrow, Dad will be too. Jason's laugh was cold. Gerald is a businessman first, idealist second. When he understands the full financial implications of unwinding these arrangements, he'll change his tune. The company's survival will trump his conscience. You don't know him as well as you think, I said. And you do? Jason countered. The daughter-in-law who's been secretly recording family conversations? Who works for a competing tech firm? Your hands aren't exactly clean in this, Becca. The difference is I can admit my mistakes, I replied. Recording the family meetings without their knowledge was wrong, even if it was for self-protection. But I'm not going to compound that error by letting you destroy Foster Tech's integrity to save your own skin. Jason studied me for a long moment, then shifted his gaze to Maya. And I suppose your article on Westridge will now include Foster Tech's involvement? A nice scoop for your career. My reporting follows the evidence, Maya said simply. If Foster Tech takes definitive action to correct the Westridge software and address any other ethical lapses, that will be part of the story too. But I won't bury the truth to protect anyone, not even Becca's family. The statement hung in the air, a reminder that the repercussions of this conflict would extend far beyond our immediate circle. The Westridge investigation could affect hundreds of employees, multiple companies, an entire ecosystem of business relationships. Come on, Ethan said finally, taking my hand. We're done here. We'll see you at the board meeting, Jason. As we turned to leave, Jason called after us. This won't play out the way you think. The recordings, the thumb drive. At the end of the day, it'll be your word against mine. And I've spent years building my credibility with the board, while systematically undermining mine, Ethan acknowledged. But there's one thing you've forgotten. What's that? I'm still Dad's son, and when forced to choose between us, blood will tell. Jason's expression darkened. We'll see. Outside in the hallway, the tension that had been holding me upright suddenly drained away. I leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. That was intense, Maya finished for me, checking her phone to confirm the recording had saved. And incredibly revealing. Jason basically admitted to orchestrating the EPA investigation as a business strategy. "Will you use that in your reporting?" I asked. Maya hesitated. "It's newsworthy. The public deserves to know when regulatory investigations are being manipulated as corporate chess moves." "It would destroy him," Ethan said quietly. "Professionally, possibly legally." "He was willing to do the same to you," Maya pointed out. To Becca. To Westridge employees who had nothing to do with executive decisions. "I know," Ethan acknowledged. "But he's still my brother." The complexity of family loyalty, even to someone who had repeatedly betrayed that loyalty, was written across Ethan's face. Despite everything, some part of him still wanted to protect Jason, or at least not be the instrument of his destruction. "Let's focus on tomorrow's board meeting first," I suggested, touching Ethan's arm gently. "One battle at a time." We parted, ways with Maya in the lobby, promising to update her after the board's decision. The drive home was quiet, both of us processing the evening's revelations. "I'm sorry about tonight," Ethan said as we pulled into our driveway. "Jason ambushed me at the office with that footage. I should have just walked away." "Why didn't you?" I asked, genuinely curious. Ethan turned off the engine sitting in the darkened car. "Because part of me wondered if it could be true. If Diana might actually be using your friendship with Maya to target foster tech clients." The admission stung. "You doubted me?" "Not you," he clarified quickly. "Never you. But the business world is murky, Becca. Diana is ruthlessly competitive. The timing of everything." Just for a moment, I let Jason plant seeds of doubt. I reached for his hand in the darkness. "I understand. And for what it's worth, I asked Diana directly about Westridge tonight. She confirmed Horizon bid on the contract, but lost, because they wouldn't compromise on environmental compliance. She has no connection to Maya's investigation." "I believe you," Ethan said, squeezing my hand. "And I'm sorry I let Jason manipulate me, even briefly." Inside the house, exhaustion hit us both. We moved through our evening routine mechanically, the weight of the coming confrontation hanging over us like a storm cloud. "What do you think will happen tomorrow?" I asked as we prepared for bed. "Will the board really stand against Jason?" Ethan considered the question carefully. "It depends on how many of them are complicit in similar arrangements. Jason wasn't wrong about one thing. These practices are common in the industry. Some board members might fear the precedent of holding one executive accountable. But with your evidence, and Gerald's support, it should be enough," Ethan acknowledged. "But Jason won't go down without a fight, and he knows where all the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking. He could take others down with him." I thought of Diana's warning to distance myself professionally from the situation. "If the board meeting goes poorly, what's your worst-case scenario?" Ethan's expression turned grim. "Criminal charges if the environmental violations are serious? Enough. Civil lawsuits, certainly. Significant financial penalties. The company might survive, but it would be damaged for years. And if the meeting goes well? Then we begin the hard work of cleaning house. Reviewing all questionable contracts, implementing ethical compliance standards, rebuilding the company's foundation." He managed a tired smile. The path my mother would have wanted. The mention of Ethan's mother, Gerald's first wife, who had instilled such strong ethical principles in her son, reminded me of what was really at stake. Not just a company's financial future, but its soul. The legacy of a family built on innovation and integrity, now at risk of being corrupted from within. "Whatever happens," I said, reaching for him, "we'll face it together." Ethan pulled me close. "Together," he agreed. "And Becca? Thank you for not giving up on my family, even when one of us did everything possible to push you away." They're my family too, I replied simply. All of them. Even Jason, though I doubt he'll ever see it that way. We fell asleep holding each other, the calm before the storm that tomorrow's board meeting would surely bring. Whatever Jason had planned, whatever alliances he had cultivated on the board, we had one thing he didn't: the truth, documented and undeniable. Whether that would be enough remained to be seen. The last thought that crossed my mind before sleep claimed me was that family, real family, was worth fighting for. Not just the peaceful moments of celebration, but the difficult confrontations that forced growth and change. Tomorrow would test the Foster family's bonds to their limits, but I had to believe they would emerge stronger for it. That Jason, for all his manipulation and betrayal, had inadvertently set in motion a reckoning that might ultimately save Foster Tech's soul. The irony would have made me smile if the stakes weren't so desperately high. Morning arrived with a relentless Portland downpour drumming against our bedroom windows. I woke before my alarm, finding Ethan already up, dressed in a suit I hadn't seen him wear in months. The serious, charcoal gray one reserved for major client presentations and board meetings. "You're ready early," I observed, sitting up in bed. "Couldn't sleep," he admitted, adjusting his tie in the mirror. "Jason will have spent all night preparing his defense. I needed to review everything one more time." He nodded toward the kitchen. "Coffee's ready." I found my phone lit up with messages, 2 from Maya asking for updates, 1 from Zoe confirming she'd be at the board meeting, and most surprisingly, 1 from Claire. "Can we talk before the meeting?" "Just us." "Coffee shop across from the office, 8 a.m. I showed Ethan the text. "What do you think?" He frowned, considering. "Could be a trap, Jason using Claire to get information. Or she could be having second thoughts about standing with him," I countered. "You saw her face when he admitted triggering the EPA investigation. She was shocked." "Your call," Ethan said, grabbing his briefcase. "But be careful. Claire's been under Jason's influence a long time. I'll hear her out," I decided. "Maybe I can bring her fully to our side before the meeting." Ethan nodded, then hesitated by the door. "Becca, about the recordings." "I know," I said quietly. "Using them at the board meeting makes me as manipulative as Jason. I've been thinking about that all night. And I think we need to be better than him. Use the evidence of the Westridge problems, yes. But the family recordings?" I shook my head. "Those were for our protection, not public exposure." Relief flashed across Ethan's face. "Thank you. Dad would be devastated to hear how Jason's been manipulating him all these years." "Some truths serve no purpose except pain," I agreed. "Gerald doesn't need to know everything to make the right decision today." Ethan crossed the room and kissed me goodbye. "I'm meeting Dad for breakfast before the board arrives. Good luck with Claire." An hour later, I pushed through the door of Compass Coffee, stamping rain from my boots and scanning the crowded morning rush for Claire. I spotted her in the far corner, already nursing a large mug between her manicured hands. Unlike her usual polished appearance, Claire looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes barely concealed by makeup. "Thanks for coming," she said as I slid into the seat across from her. "I wasn't sure you would." "Of course I would," I replied, setting down my umbrella. "We're family." Something flashed across her face. Guilt, perhaps. "Are we, after everything Jason's done to push you away?" "You're not responsible for your husband's actions, Claire." "Aren't I?" She stared into her coffee. "I've enabled him for years, looked the other way when things didn't add up, defended him against anyone who questioned his methods, including you." A barista appeared with a second mug. "Your usual," Claire explained. "I ordered when I saw you arrive." I wrapped my cold hands around the warm ceramic, touched by the gesture. Claire and I had never been close, not like Zoe and I were. but there had been a time before Jason when we'd had our own sisterly bond. "Why did you want to meet?" I asked gently. Claire took a deep breath. "Jason was up all night making calls, securing votes for the board meeting. He doesn't know I'm here." "What kind of calls?" "To board members who have benefited from his approach to business, reminding them of favors owed, deals made. He's building a coalition to maintain the Westridge contract and discredit Ethan's concerns." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "And to force Gerald to choose between his son and his company." My stomach tightened. "Can he succeed?" "Maybe." Claire twisted her wedding ring nervously. 3 board members are firmly in his pocket. 2 are independent enough to vote their conscience. 1 is on the fence." A bitter smile. "And then there's the family. Gerald, Ethan, and now Zoe. Jason needs 1 more vote to deadlock the board, which would maintain the status quo. The Westridge contract would continue, I realized, with all its ethical problems." Claire nodded. "And Jason would remain in control of international operations despite everything." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm the swing vote," she said quietly. "The 8th board member. I've never voted against Jason before. Not once in 10 years. The implication hung in the air between us. Claire was considering the unthinkable, opposing her husband, in the most public, consequential way possible. "Has he asked you directly?" I questioned. "To stand with him today?" "He assumes I will," Claire replied, a hint of steel entering her voice. "That's the problem. He doesn't even think he needs to ask. 10 years of my unwavering support has made him certain of my vote." I studied my sister-in-law carefully. "What changed, Claire? You defended him yesterday morning at the lookout. By afternoon you were questioning him. What happened in between?" She pulled out her phone, opening a document before sliding it across the table to me. "This happened. I found it on our home server last night while looking for tax documents. The file was labeled Contingency Planning and contained detailed instructions for shutting down Foster Tech's international division and transferring key assets to a new company in the event of regulatory challenges. The formation date of the shell company listed at the bottom was 3 months ago. Jason's been planning an escape route," I breathed, "in case the environmental violations were discovered." Claire nodded, taking back her phone. "An escape? Route for himself and select assets. Not for the company, not for Foster Tech employees, and certainly not for our family." "Have you shown this to Gerald or Ethan?" "Not yet." Claire's hands trembled slightly. I needed to process it first. To accept what it means about the man I married. 10 years of marriage, I realized, and Jason had been preparing to abandon his wife's family company if things went south. The betrayal was more personal than professional. "What will you do?" I asked. Claire squared her shoulders, suddenly resembling her father in her determination. "Vote my conscience, but I needed to warn you first. Jason has 1 more card to play, something he's been saving as a nuclear option." "What is it?" "I don't know exactly. Just that it involves you. Directly. He has a file labeled with your name in his private documents. Whatever it is, he's confident it will turn the board against you and, by extension, Ethan." My mind raced through possibilities. The recordings I'd made would certainly damage my reputation with the family if revealed, but Jason wouldn't want those made public either, given what they contained. What else could he have? "Claire, thank you for the warning," I said sincerely. "And for being willing to stand up to Jason. I know how hard that must be." She gave a sad smile. "Easier than I expected, actually. Once I saw that contingency plan, everything became clear. The man I've been defending isn't the man I thought I married." We finished our coffee in thoughtful silence, 2 women united by the painful clarity that comes with betrayal. As we prepared to leave, Claire caught my arm. Whatever happens in that boardroom today, Becca, I want you to know I'm sorry. For believing his lies about you, for keeping you at arm's length all these years. You deserved better from me. We can't change the past, I told her, but we can make different choices going forward. She nodded, her expression resolute. Starting. Today, Foster Tech's headquarters occupied a renovated warehouse in Portland's Pearl District, all exposed brick and steel beams juxtaposed with cutting-edge technology. As Claire and I approached the main entrance, Zoe was waiting under the awning, smoking a cigarette, a habit she'd supposedly quit years ago. Stress smoking, she explained sheepishly, stubbing it out when she saw us. Board meetings bring out my worst coping mechanisms. You and me both, Claire admitted, surprising both of us. The sisters exchanged a tentative smile. Perhaps the first genuine moment between them in years. The lobby was quieter than usual, as if the building itself sensed the gravity of what was about to unfold. The receptionist directed us to the 10th floor boardroom, her curious gaze following us to the elevators. Office gossip had clearly been circulating about the emergency meeting. Is Dad here yet? Zoe asked as we ascended. With Ethan, since breakfast, Claire confirmed. Jason arrived separately, earlier. He's been calling board members into private. Meetings all morning. Lobbying for votes, I murmured. Working his magic, Zoe added sardonically. The Jason Warren charm offensive. The boardroom doors were closed when we arrived, voices audible but indistinct from within. Claire's hand paused on the handle, her professional mask sliding into place. Ready? She asked, looking between Zoe and me. As will ever be, Zoe replied. The room fell silent as we entered. 10 people were already seated around the massive oak table, Gerald at the head, looking older than his years but resolute, Ethan to his right, Jason to his left, and the 5 non-family board members distributed between them. The tension was palpable, conversations clearly interrupted mid-sentence. Claire, Jason acknowledged, his confident smile faltering slightly, as he registered her arrival with Zoe and me. I was just explaining to the board the unfortunate timing of yesterday's EPA announcement. Gerald nodded toward the remaining seats. Join us, ladies. We were about to begin formal proceedings. I took a chair along the wall, behind Ethan, present, as his wife, but not a board member. Zoe and Claire took their places at the table, Claire directly across from Jason. Something in his expression shifted as he registered this positioning, physical distance mirroring the emotional gulf that had opened between them. For those just joining us, Gerald began, his voice stronger than I'd expected, we're addressing 2 critical issues today. First, the Westridge Development Software contract, which has come under scrutiny due to ethical concerns about its environmental reporting features. Second, the EPA investigation announced yesterday targeting Westridge for potential violations. Perfect timing, wouldn't you say? Jason interjected smoothly. The marketplace clearly rewards our decision to distance ourselves from a problematic client. That's not quite accurate, Jason, Ethan countered. As we've discussed, the EPA investigation appears to have been triggered by an anonymous tip. A tip you yourself orchestrated. Murmurs spread around the table. One of the board members, Patricia Alvarez, a venture capitalist who'd been with Foster Tech since its early days, leaned forward. Is this true, Jason? Did you report your own client to federal regulators? Jason's practiced smile never wavered. I acted to protect Foster Tech's interests when it became clear that Westridge's practices might create liability for us, strategic crisis management, nothing more. Without board approval, Gerald pointed out, or even notification. The situation required immediate action, Jason insisted. I made a judgment call, as I've done countless times to grow this company's international footprint. Growth at what cost? Zoe challenged. If we're building that growth on ethically questionable contracts, What are we really creating? A profitable company, retorted Howard Chen, one of the board members Claire had identified as firmly in Jason's camp, which is our fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. Our responsibility goes beyond short-term profit, Gerald countered. Foster Tech was founded on principles of integrity and innovation. If we've strayed from those values, we need to correct course. The debate continued for nearly an hour, growing increasingly heated as battle lines were drawn. Jason presented financial projections showing significant losses if the Westridge contract was canceled, while Ethan countered, with reports detailing the software's problematic features and the potential liability they created. Throughout the discussion, Claire remained silent, observing. Jason repeatedly glanced her way, seeking the supportive nods she'd always provided in past meetings. Her neutral expression clearly unsettled him. Finally, Howard Chen voiced the question hanging over the proceedings. This seems to be devolving into a family disagreement. Perhaps we should hear from all the Fosters before proceeding. Claire, you've been quiet. What's your position on the Westridge situation? All eyes turned to Claire. Jason leaned forward slightly, confidence returning to his expression. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. His wife's expected endorsement. Claire met my gaze briefly before addressing the board. My position is that we have a responsibility to uphold ethical standards, even when profit is at stake. Especially when profit is at stake. Jason's smile froze. Claire, perhaps you don't fully understand the financial implications. I understand perfectly, Jason, she interrupted calmly. I also understand contingency planning. The reference landed like a bomb in the room. Jason's expression shuddered, his posture stiffening. What contingency planning? Gerald asked, looking between them. Claire pulled out her tablet, sliding it toward her father. Jason has been preparing to abandon Foster Tech if the environmental violations came to light. He created a shell company 3 months ago to transfer key assets and clients, protecting himself while leaving the family company to face the consequences. The boardroom erupted in shocked exclamations. Gerald stared at the document, face ashen. Is this true, Jason? It's standard risk management, Jason defended, but his usual smoothness had evaporated. Many executives maintain contingency plans. Plans to abandon ship at the first sign of trouble? Ethan challenged. Plans that protect yourself but sacrifice the company you claim to care about? Jason's eyes hardened as he looked at Claire. We'll discuss this at home. No, she replied evenly. We won't. We'll discuss it here, as a board, making decisions in the best interest of this company. For the first time, I saw genuine fear flash across Jason's face. He was losing control of the narrative, and he knew it. His gaze darted to me, then back to the board. If we're discussing conflicts of interest, he said, voice sharpening, perhaps we should address the elephant in the room. The connection between Rebecca Mitchell's employment at Horizon Innovations and the targeting of Foster Tech clients. And there it was, the nuclear option Claire had warned about. Jason pulled out a folder and began distributing documents. Around the table. What's this? Gerald asked, frowning at the papers. Evidence that Becca has been feeding confidential Foster Tech information to Horizon, Jason stated flatly, including details of the Westridge contract that helped them position their own products against ours. I stood, unable to remain silent. That's absolutely false. I've never shared confidential information about Foster Tech with anyone at Horizon. Then perhaps you can explain these emails, Jason challenged, holding up a printed page. From your Horizon account to Diana Reeves, specifically discussing Foster Tech's approach to environmental reporting software. My blood ran cold as I recognized the text, a genuine email I'd sent months ago but completely taken out of context. That was about industry trends and sustainability reporting, not specific Foster Tech products. It was part of a company-wide discussion about market direction. Convenient interpretation, Jason replied. But the timing aligns perfectly with Horizon's competing product development. Where did you get my emails? I demanded, suddenly understanding. Those are private company communications. Jason's smile returned, cold and triumphant. From a concerned Horizon employee who recognized the ethical breach. Someone who, unlike you, understands corporate loyalty. A mole at Horizon. Someone had been feeding Jason selected communications that could be spun to implicate me in corporate espionage. The realization was dizzying. This is absurd, Ethan interjected. Becca has maintained strict professional boundaries between her work at Horizon and her connection to Foster Tech. The evidence suggests otherwise, Howard Chen remarked, examining the emails. These communications, while not explicitly mentioning Foster Tech products, certainly dance around proprietary concepts very similar to our own development initiatives. Gerald studied the documents with a troubled expression. Becca, these do raise questions about information flow between competitors. Dad, you can't seriously be considering this, Zoe protested. Jason is clearly trying to deflect from his own misconduct by attacking Becca. I'm simply presenting facts, Jason insisted. Facts that contextualize Ethan's sudden ethical concerns about the company. Perhaps his principled stand isn't so principled after all, if influenced by his wife's competing professional interests. The room grew uncomfortably quiet as board members digested this insinuation. I felt the ground shifting beneath me. Jason had successfully muddied the waters, creating exactly the kind of doubt he needed to undermine our credibility. May I address the board? I asked, heart pounding but voice steady. Gerald nodded, gesturing for me to continue. I moved to the head of the table, facing the assembled directors. Those emails are real, but selectively chosen and presented without context. I've never shared Foster Tech proprietary information with Horizon. Ever. What you're seeing are industry discussions that happen at every tech company daily. Conveniently similar to our confidential development paths, Jason noted. Because we're in the same industry, working on similar problems, I countered. But let's put that aside for a moment. Even if you believe the worst about me, it doesn't change the facts about the Westridge software. It doesn't erase the ethical problems with helping a client hide environmental violations. It doesn't justify Jason reporting his own client to federal authorities to control the narrative. I turned to Gerald directly. And it certainly doesn't excuse creating an escape plan to abandon the family company if things went south. Focus on the Westridge issue. That's what matters today. Patricia Alvarez, who had been quietly observing the back and forth, finally spoke. Ms. Mitchell makes a valid point. While these alleged conflicts of interest are concerning and warrant further investigation, they don't change the fundamental question before us. Should Foster Tech continue developing software that helps clients circumvent environmental reporting requirements? Gerald nodded slowly. Patricia's right. Let's focus on the matter at hand. The allegations against Rebecca can be addressed separately. Jason's jaw tightened, his redirection strategy faltering. The matters are connected. If this board is being manipulated by outside interests. We're getting nowhere with these accusations, Claire interrupted firmly. I move that we proceed to a vote on the Westridge contract. I second, Zoe added immediately. Gerald surveyed the room. All in favor of proceeding to the vote? 6 hands rose. Gerald, Ethan, Claire, Zoe, Patricia, and surprisingly, Michael. Denton, a board member I'd believed was aligned with Jason. Only Howard Chen and his ally Susan Torres kept their hands down. Motion carries, Gerald declared. We'll vote on whether to continue the Westridge contract as designed or to modify the software to ensure full environmental compliance, even if that means renegotiating or possibly losing the client. Jason's composure was cracking visibly now, his carefully constructed control of the board slipping away. Before we vote, the board should consider one more thing. He pulled out his phone. I have here recordings of multiple conversations where Ethan and Becca discuss using environmental concerns as a pretext for undermining my position at Foster Tech. The blood drained from my face. Jason had been making his own recordings? The irony would have been amusing if the stakes weren't so high. Play them, Ethan challenged, surprising everyone. Let's hear exactly what was said, in full context. Jason hesitated, clearly not expecting this response. The content is sensitive. Either play the recordings or withdraw them from consideration, Gerald demanded. We won't vote based on partial information or innuendo. Backed into a corner, Jason pressed play. His phone projected a conversation between Ethan and me from 3 months ago, discussing the Westridge contract's ethical implications. But rather than revealing manipulation, the unedited conversation captured our genuine concern about environmental standards and Foster Tech's reputation. Not about undermining Jason, my voice came through clearly. It's about making sure Foster Tech maintains the ethical standards your father built it on. We can find a way to make sustainable software profitable. I know, Ethan's recorded voice replied. I just need to find the right approach to raise these concerns without it becoming another power struggle. Jason stopped the playback, realizing too late that the unedited conversation undermined rather than supported his allegations. The board members exchanged glances, the manipulative nature of Jason's tactics becoming increasingly apparent. Any other evidence you'd like to present? Gerald asked his son-in-law, voice heavy with disappointment. Jason pocketed his phone. I think the board has enough information to make an informed decision. Indeed we do, Patricia agreed, her expression making clear which way she was leaning. Gerald straightened in his chair. Then let's proceed to the vote. The motion before us is to modify the Westridge software to ensure full environmental compliance, even if that requires renegotiating the contract at a financial loss. All in favor? Gerald raised his hand first, followed immediately by Ethan, Zoe, Claire, and Patricia. After a moment's hesitation, Michael Denton joined them. Opposed? Howard Chen and Susan Torres raised their hands, both avoiding eye contact with Gerald. Jason sat motionless, his vote now irrelevant to the outcome. The motion passes 6-2, Gerald announced. Foster Tech will modify the Westridge software to ensure full environmental compliance and ethical reporting capabilities. A collective exhale seemed to pass through the room. The immediate crisis had been resolved, but the tension remained palpable. This vote was only the beginning of what promised to be a difficult restructuring process. There's one more matter we need to address, Gerald continued, his voice gaining strength. The leadership of our international division and the other contracts Jason referenced that operate in similar gray areas. Jason finally found his voice. You can't seriously be considering dismantling our entire international strategy based on one problematic contract. Not dismantling, Gerald corrected. Reviewing, ensuring that all our operations align with the ethical standards this company was built on. That review should be conducted by someone without conflicts of interest, Howard Chen interjected, glancing pointedly at me. Agreed, Gerald said, which is why I propose forming an ethics committee comprising board members and outside counsel, reporting directly to me as CEO. Jason's head snapped up. You're stepping back into the CEO role? Temporarily, Gerald confirmed, until we've resolved these issues and determined appropriate leadership moving forward. The implication was clear. Jason's position was in jeopardy. His carefully constructed power base was crumbling before his eyes. You can't do this, he protested, abandoning all pretense of corporate decorum. I built the international division from nothing. Those contracts, those relationships, they're mine. They're Foster Tech's, Gerald corrected firmly, and they'll be evaluated according to Foster Tech standards. Dad's right, Claire said, meeting her husband's incredulous stare. We need to ensure every aspect of this company operates with integrity, including international. Jason's gaze hardened as he looked at his wife. You've made your choice, then. I have, she confirmed quietly. I choose my family. My values. With that, the final thread of Jason's control snapped. He stood abruptly, gathering his papers. You're making a catastrophic mistake. When the financial impact of these ethical decisions hits the quarterly reports, you'll be begging me to return and fix the mess you're creating. Perhaps, Gerald acknowledged. But I'd rather lead a smaller company with integrity than a larger one built on deception. Jason's gaze swept the room, lingering on each person who had voted against him, saving his coldest glare for me. Without another word, he strode out, the boardroom door slamming behind him with unnecessary force. In the silence that followed, Howard Chen and Susan Torres exchanged uncomfortable glances before rising from their seats. We should recuse ourselves from further discussion, given our support for the previous approach, Howard stated formally. But we will, of course, respect the board's decision. After they departed, the remaining board members sat in stunned silence for a moment, processing what had just transpired. Gerald looked exhausted but resolute. Well, he said finally, that was certainly the most eventful board meeting in Foster Tech history. A nervous chuckle rippled around the table, breaking the tension. What happens now? Zoe asked, voicing what everyone was thinking. Now we do the hard work, Gerald replied. Complete audit of all contracts and practices, transparent communication, with regulators about the Westridge situation, restructuring where necessary. He looked at Ethan. I'll need your help, son. Your environmental expertise will be crucial for reforming our approach. Ethan nodded. I'm here, Dad, as a consultant, as we discussed. And Claire, Gerald continued, turning to his daughter. You showed tremendous courage today. The ethics committee will need your financial acumen. Claire's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Thank you for trusting me, despite everything. You're a Foster first, he reminded her gently. Always have been. The remaining business proceeded efficiently, establishing the ethics committee, scheduling follow-up meetings, assigning immediate responsibilities. Throughout it all, I sat quietly, still processing Jason's allegations and their potential impact on my own career at Horizon. The selected emails he'd obtained would require explanation to Diana, a conversation I wasn't looking forward to. As the meeting adjourned, board members filed out, leaving just the family. Gerald sagged in his chair, the weight of the day's decisions evident in his posture. Dad, are you okay? Zoe asked, concerned. He managed a tired smile. Just realizing how much I missed under my own nose. The company I built, twisted into something I wouldn't recognize. He shook his head. Jason was right about one thing. Unwinding these practices will be costly. But worth it, Ethan asserted. Worth it, Gerald agreed. Now, if you don't mind, I think I need a moment alone to process everything. We respected his wish, filing out of the boardroom. In the hallway, Claire pulled me aside. Becca, about Jason's allegations regarding your emails. They were taken out of context, I assured her. But I'll need to address them with Horizon. Diana deserves to know what happened. Claire nodded. If you need character witnesses for your professional integrity, the Foster family stands behind you. All of us. The gesture brought unexpected tears to my eyes. After years of feeling like an outsider in the family, Claire's simple statement of solidarity meant more than she could know. Thank you, I managed. That means everything. As we waited for the elevator, Ethan wrapped his arm around my waist. You okay? Processing, I admitted. It's a lot to take in. You stood your ground brilliantly, he said, even when Jason tried to drag your reputation through the mud. He's not done, I warned. Those emails, taken out of context, could still cause problems at Horizon. We'll face that together, Ethan promised, just like everything else. The elevator doors opened, and as we stepped inside, I caught sight of Jason through the glass walls of a conference room, speaking intensely on his phone, gesturing angrily. Even in defeat, he was calculating his next move, planning his comeback. "This isn't over," I murmured, watching him. "No," Ethan agreed, following my gaze. "But today was a turning point. For the company, for the family, for all of us." As the elevator descended, I leaned against Ethan, drawing strength from his steady presence. We had won the battle, but not the war. Jason's allegations about my professional ethics would need to be addressed. The Foster Tech audit would uncover more uncomfortable truths. Claire and Jason's marriage hung in the balance. But for the first time since I'd received Jason's threatening email, I felt hope. The truth had prevailed in that boardroom, despite Jason's manipulations. The family had chosen integrity over expediency, values over profit. The road ahead would be difficult, but we would walk it together, as a family united by something stronger than blood, shared principles. The elevator reached the lobby, doors sliding open to reveal the bustling world beyond Foster Tech's internal drama. Life continuing, unaware of the seismic shifts that had just occurred in the company's 10th floor boardroom. "Ready?" Ethan asked, taking my hand. I squared my shoulders, thinking of all that still lay ahead. The conversation with Diana, the potential professional fallout, the family healing that had only just begun. "Ready," I confirmed, stepping forward with him into whatever came next. 3 weeks after the fateful board meeting, the Foster family gathered at Gerald's suburban home for Sunday dinner, a tradition that had been suspended during the height of tensions with Jason. The spring evening was unusually warm, allowing us to set up on the expansive back deck overlooking the carefully tended garden where Gerald spent his weekends. "Dad's putting on a brave face," Zoe murmured, helping me arrange a platter of grilled vegetables. "But this whole situation has aged him years." I followed her gaze to where Gerald stood at the grill, laughing at something Ethan had said. The laughter was genuine, but the new lines around his eyes and the slight stoop to his shoulders told a different story. The past 3 weeks had been brutal. The Foster Tech audit had uncovered more ethical shortcuts than anyone anticipated, leading to difficult decisions, financial penalties, and a temporary but significant drop in the company's stock value. "He's resilient," I replied, "and he's doing what he believes is right. That counts for something." "Everything, according to Dad," Zoe agreed. "Oh, heads up. Claire's here." I turned to see Claire coming through the garden gate alone, elegant as always, but with a new aura of independence about her. She carried a bottle of wine and what appeared to be a stack of documents. "Sorry I'm late," she called, making her way up the deck steps. "Final Ethics Committee report needed some revisions." Gerald set down his grilling tongs to embrace his daughter. "Work stays at the office today, sweetheart. Family time only." Claire smiled, returning his hug. "Just brought copies for everyone's peace of mind." They're officially filed now. Foster Tech's complete ethical audit and compliance plan. The significance of the moment wasn't lost on any of us. 3 weeks of intense work, difficult revelations, and painful decisions had culminated in this document, a roadmap for the company's ethical reset. "Any word from Jason?" Gerald asked quietly, the question that had hovered over every family gathering since the confrontation. Claire's expression tightened slightly. "His lawyer delivered the signed divorce papers this morning. He's accepted the settlement terms." A complicated silence followed this announcement. Though no one would say it aloud, there was collective relief that Jason had chosen not to drag the divorce through a protracted legal battle. His departure from both the family and the company was becoming final, clean, if not painless. "How are you holding up?" I asked Claire as we moved inside to fetch serving dishes. Away from the others, she allowed her composed facade to slip slightly. Some days are harder than others. 10 years is a long time to invest in someone, only to discover they're not who you thought they were. I can't imagine, I said truthfully. The strangest part is the relief, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Like I've been holding my breath for years without realizing it, always trying to measure up to his expectations, always defending his methods. She straightened, retrieving a bowl from the cabinet. But enough about me. How are things at Horizon? After Jason's allegations? It was my turn to sigh. The day after the board meeting, I'd had a difficult but necessary conversation with Diana, explaining the out-of-context emails Jason had presented to the Foster Tech Board. Diana was understanding once I explained everything. The company conducted its own review of my communications and found no evidence of improper information sharing. I'm on solid ground professionally. I'm glad, Claire said sincerely. Jason's attempt to drag you down was perhaps his lowest move. We returned to the deck, where Ethan was pouring wine, and Zoe was entertaining Gerald with a story about her latest graphic design client. The scene was so normal, so familial, it was almost possible to forget the corporate drama still unfolding. At Foster Tech headquarters, dinner progressed with the easy rhythm of family meals, purposefully steered toward lighter topics: Zoe's new apartment, Ethan's progress on establishing his environmental consultancy, my recent marketing campaign. At Horizon, it wasn't until dessert that Gerald cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. I have an announcement, he said, setting down his coffee cup. I've made a decision about Foster Tech's leadership going forward. We collectively held our breath. Gerald had resumed CEO duties temporarily during the crisis, but at 70, the role was taxing his energy and health. Claire will be taking over as CEO, effective next month, he announced. The pride in his voice was unmistakable. Claire looked stunned, though I suspected she'd had some warning this was coming. Dad, are you sure? After everything that's happened? Because of everything that's happened, Gerald corrected gently. You stood up for this company's integrity when it would have been easier to look the other way. You've led the ethics committee with remarkable thoroughness and courage. There's no one I trust more to carry Foster Tech forward. Tears glistened in Claire's eyes as she reached for her father's hand. I won't let you down. I know you won't, sweetheart. Ethan raised his glass. To Claire, Foster Tech's new CEO. We all joined the toast, the moment marked by genuine celebration mixed with the bittersweet acknowledgement of the difficult journey that had led here. And there's more, Gerald continued once glasses were lowered. Zoe will be joining the board permanently, with special oversight of our creative and marketing divisions. Zoe nearly choked on her wine. Seriously? You're letting the family rebel make executive decisions? Gerald chuckled. The family rebel who spotted Jason's ethical lapses long before the rest of us? Yes, I think you've earned a permanent seat at the table. The evening continued with discussion of the company's future. Claire's vision for rebuilding Foster Tech's reputation, Zoe's ideas for refreshing the brand, Ethan's role as an environmental compliance consultant. Throughout it all, I noticed Gerald watching his children with a mixture of pride and relief, seeing the company he'd built passing into capable, principled hands. As we helped clear the table, Gerald pulled me aside. I haven't forgotten Jason's allegations against you, Becca. I want you to know I never believed them. Not really. Thank you, I said, touched by his declaration. That means a lot. You've stood by this family through everything. Jason's hostility, the company crisis, Claire's difficult decision. You're as much a Foster as any of my children. His words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. After years of feeling like an outsider, Gerald's simple acknowledgement of my place in the family was profoundly moving. The recordings, he continued, voice lowering. The ones you made of our family meetings. Ethan told me about them. My heart sank. Gerald, He raised a hand to stop my explanation. No need. I understand why you felt it necessary. Jason was manipulating situations, twisting your words. You were protecting yourself. We never intended to play them publicly, I assured him. They were just insurance. I know. He patted my shoulder. And I'm grateful you didn't. Some truths are better left private, especially in families. As the evening wound down, Ethan and I walked together to our car beneath a sky scattered with stars. The spring air carried the scent of Gerald's blooming cherry trees, a reminder that renewal follows even the harshest seasons. That went better than I expected, Ethan remarked, keys in hand but making no move to unlock the car just yet. Claire as CEO is the right choice. She's stronger than anyone gave her credit for, I agreed, even herself. Speaking of strength, Ethan turned to face me fully. Have you told them about the offer from Horizon yet? I shook my head. Tonight was about celebrating the new Foster Tech leadership. My potential promotion can wait. Diana had approached me the previous week with an unexpected opportunity, leading Horizon's new ethical business practices division, a department created partly in response to the industry-wide reckoning triggered by the Westridge scandal. The position represented a significant career advancement, but came with complicated family implications. You should tell them soon, Ethan encouraged. They'll be happy for you. Even Claire. You think so? It might seem like divided loyalties. Again. Ethan shook his head firmly. Not anymore. Everyone in that house tonight understands that supporting family means supporting each other's individual paths. Besides, Foster Tech could use a strong ethical ally in the industry. His confidence warmed me. I'll tell them next time. When things have settled a bit more. We drove home in comfortable silence, the events of the past month settling into a new perspective. The crisis that had threatened to tear the Foster family apart had instead forced them to re-examine their foundations, both corporate and personal, and rebuild something stronger. The following morning, I arrived at Horizon to find Diana waiting. In my office, an expression of concern on her normally composed face. We have a situation, she announced without preamble. Jason Warren reached out to me directly. He's proposing a partnership between his new venture and Horizon. I sank into my chair, the news landing like a physical blow. His new venture? Already? Apparently he's moved quickly. He's established a new firm called Nexus International, using assets and client relationships from his time at Foster Tech. He's approaching Horizon for backing on the Asian market expansion. That's bold, I managed, processing the implications. What did you tell him? That any partnership would require due diligence, including ethical compliance verification. Diana's smile was sharp. He seemed less enthusiastic after that stipulation. A laugh escaped me despite the seriousness of the situation. I'm sure he was. The reason I'm telling you this, Becca, is that he specifically mentioned your name during our conversation, said I should consider all perspectives before allowing certain individuals to influence Horizon's decision. The thinly veiled threat was classic Jason, implying he could revive his allegations about my professional ethics if Horizon didn't cooperate with his new venture. He's not giving up, I observed. Apparently not, which brings me to my next question. Diana leaned forward, her expression turning serious. The ethical business practices division I've offered you. How soon can you start? Jason's approach confirms what I've suspected. This industry needs a fundamental reset on its ethical compass, and I want Horizon leading that transformation. Her confidence in me, especially in the face of Jason's implied threats, was deeply affirming. I can start transitioning next week. I'll need to brief my marketing team on ongoing projects. Excellent. Diana stood to leave, then paused at the door. And Becca, when Jason calls again, and he will, I'd like you to take the meeting. My surprise must have shown on my face. Not to consider his proposal, Diana clarified. But to make our position unmistakably clear. Horizon's future partnerships will prioritize ethical practices above profit margins. I can't think of anyone better to deliver that message than you. After she left, I sat in stunned silence, contemplating the symmetry of the situation. Jason had spent years trying to push me out of the Foster family circle, casting me as an outsider with divided loyalties. Now he would have to face me as the embodiment of Horizon's ethical standards, the very position he had tried to undermine with his accusations. I sent Ethan a quick text. Jason's launched a new company, approaching Horizon for partnership. Diana wants me to take the meeting. His reply came moments later. The perfect person to handle it. Karma has a sense of humor. By the time Maya called, that afternoon, I'd processed the news enough to appreciate the journalistic angle she immediately identified. Jason Warren, orchestrator of the anonymous EPA tip that exposed Westridge, now reinventing himself as an international business consultant, she summarized. That's quite a pivot. Less of a pivot, more of a continuation, I corrected. He's doing exactly what his Foster Tech contingency plan outlined, salvaging client relationships and assets while abandoning the family company. Speaking of which, Maya's tone turned professional. My article on the Foster Tech ethical reset runs tomorrow. Claire reviewed the technical details for accuracy, but I wanted to give you a heads up about the personal elements. The article had been a source of tension initially, Maya's professional obligation to report the Westridge story conflicting with my desire to protect the Foster family from unnecessary public exposure. We'd reached a compromise. Maya would focus on the corporate response and forward-looking ethical reforms rather than family drama, while still reporting the essential facts. Does it mention the recordings? I asked, my primary concern. No, Maya assured me. Those remain private, as agreed. The piece focuses on Foster Tech's proactive response once the issues came to light, the ethics committee, the compliance plan, Claire's promotion to CEO. It's actually quite positive about how the company has handled the crisis. Relief flooded through me. The family's private pain wouldn't become public spectacle. Thank you, Maya, for understanding the difference between what's newsworthy and what's just painful. Don't thank me too quickly, she cautioned. The article does mention Jason's departure and the formation of his new venture. I had to cover that angle. It's directly relevant to the corporate story. Of course, I acknowledged. That's fair reporting. I also included a brief statement from Gerald about the company's ethical recommitment. He's quite eloquent about second chances and corporate responsibility. That sounded like Gerald, finding wisdom even in difficult circumstances. He'll appreciate the opportunity to shape that narrative. After we hung up, I forwarded Maya's article warning to Ethan and Claire, wanting them prepared for tomorrow's publication. Claire's response was immediate and surprisingly positive. Good. Better to have the full story public so we can move forward. No more shadows. Her attitude reflected a significant shift from the Claire I'd first known, the one who had instinctively protected Jason and the company's image at all costs. This new Claire understood that genuine integrity sometimes required painful transparency. The next morning, Maya's article appeared on the Tribune's front page. Foster Tech leads industry. Ethical reset following environmental reporting controversy. The piece was fair, focused more on systemic industry issues than personal drama, with quotes from Gerald about the company's renewed commitment to its founding values. A smaller sidebar mentioned Jason's departure and new venture, noting clinically that Warren declined to comment on the circumstances surrounding his exit from Foster Tech or the ethical concerns that prompted the company's internal review. I was reading the article at my desk when Ethan called. Have you seen the company-wide email Dad just sent out? No, what does it say? He's forwarded Maya's article to every Foster Tech employee with his own message about transparency and the path forward. He's owning the situation completely. Gerald's courage didn't surprise me. Despite everything, he remained the family's moral center, willing to acknowledge mistakes and chart a better course. "How's it being received?" I asked. "Overwhelmingly positive, according to Claire. People appreciate the honesty. Many suspected something was off with the international division's practices but didn't know how to address it." Another call beeped through. Diana. "I should take this," I told Ethan. "Probably about the article." "Go. I'll see you tonight. Love you." Diana's tone was brisk when I answered. "Jason Warren is in the lobby demanding to see me. Apparently, he objects to how his new venture was characterized in this morning's Tribune article." My heart raced. "What do you want me to do?" "Join me in the conference room. I think it's time for that meeting we discussed yesterday." 15 minutes later, I walked into Horizon's main conference room to find Jason already seated across from Diana, his normally impeccable appearance slightly frayed around the edges. The Tribune lay open on the table between them, folded to show the sidebar about his new company. He stiffened when he saw me. "I requested a private meeting with Ms. Reeves." "Becca is leading our new ethical business practices division," Diana replied smoothly. "Any potential partnership would require her approval, so her presence is non-negotiable." The irony of the situation wasn't lost on any of us. After years of Jason positioning me as an outsider at Foster Tech, I now held gatekeeping authority at Horizon. "Congratulations on the promotion," he said, voice devoid of warmth. "How convenient that it comes just as my new venture seeks industry partners." "Not convenience," Diana corrected. "Strategy. Recent events have made clear that the tech industry needs stronger ethical oversight. Becca's experience with both Foster Tech and Horizon gives her unique perspective on the costs of ethical shortcuts." Jason's jaw tightened. "If this meeting is just an opportunity to lecture me about business ethics—" "It's an opportunity for clarity," I interrupted, surprising myself with my steady tone. "Horizon is committed to partnerships that uphold the highest ethical standards. That commitment isn't negotiable or subject to personal relationships." "Meaning my proposal is dead in the water," Jason concluded bitterly. "Not necessarily," Diana replied. "Meaning any partnership would require full transparency about your business practices, client relationships, and compliance measures. The same standards we apply to all potential partners." Jason's gaze fixed on me. "And you would oversee this evaluation, despite our history?" "Professionally and objectively," I confirmed. "The same way I've always conducted myself, despite your allegations to the contrary." Something shifted in his expression, not quite respect, but perhaps a reluctant reassessment. "You've positioned yourself well in the aftermath. I underestimated you." "You misunderstood me," I corrected. "I never wanted power over you, Jason. I just wanted a fair chance to be part of the family, to contribute professionally without being undermined." He absorbed this, then turned back to Diana. "I'll consider your ethical compliance requirements, and be in touch if they align with Nexus International's business model." We all understood the subtext. They wouldn't align. Jason's new venture was likely built on the same ethical shortcuts that had characterized his approach at Foster Tech. After he left, Diana regarded me thoughtfully. "You handled that remarkably well." "Practice," I admitted. "Years of navigating. Difficult conversations with him." "He won't be back," Diana predicted. "At least not until he realizes the industry is genuinely changing." The Westridge scandal has triggered reviews at every major tech firm. Companies can't afford those kinds of ethical liabilities anymore. She was right. Jason had always been skilled at reading market trends. He would eventually recognize that his old approach was becoming untenable in the evolving industry landscape. But that realization would come too late to salvage his relationship with the Foster family. That evening, we gathered at Ethan's and my townhouse for an impromptu dinner, Claire, Zoe, and Gerald joining us to process the day's developments. Gerald brought Maya's article, now folded and refolded from multiple readings. Not as painful, as I expected, he admitted, as we settled in the living room with drinks before dinner. She captured the company's response well. The Tribune's website comments are overwhelmingly supportive, Zoe reported, scrolling through her phone. People respect companies that address problems head-on instead of hiding them. Claire nodded thoughtfully. That will be our approach going forward. Complete transparency, even when it's uncomfortable. Speaking of transparency, I began, deciding the moment was right. I should tell you all about a development at Horizon. Diana has offered me leadership of their new ethical business practices division. Becca, that's wonderful, Gerald exclaimed, genuine pleasure lighting his features. You're not concerned about conflicts? I asked carefully. Claire answered before her father could. Why would we be? Having someone we trust overseeing ethical compliance at Horizon is an asset for everyone. The industry needs more cross-company collaboration on these issues, not less. Besides, Zoe added with a mischievous smile, who better to spot ethical shortcuts than someone who's seen them from the inside? Her comment broke the lingering tension, drawing laughter from everyone, including me. The ability to find humor in the painful recent past marked a significant healing milestone for the family. Jason came to Horizon today, I shared, deciding complete openness was best. Seeking partnership for his new venture? Gerald's expression clouded. Already building alliances against Foster Tech, I imagine? Not successfully, I assured him. Diana made it clear that any partnership would require rigorous ethical compliance verification. He left without commitments. He'll find other partners, Claire predicted, her tone matter-of-fact rather than bitter. But the industry is changing. His approach is becoming outdated. Which reminds me, Gerald interjected. The ethics. Committee's compliance plan has already attracted interest from other tech firms. Claire's been approached about sharing our framework as an industry standard. Really? I asked, pleasantly surprised. Claire nodded. Apparently, being first to publicly address these issues has positioned us as thought leaders. We're turning a crisis into an opportunity to reshape industry practices. Mom would be proud, Ethan said quietly. The mention of his mother, Gerald's first wife, whose values had shaped the original company culture, brought a poignant moment of reflection. She would, Gerald agreed, voice thick with emotion. Of all of you, the way you've handled this situation, the choices you've made, she would see her values living on through each of you. We moved to the dining room for dinner, the conversation shifting to lighter topics, Claire's plans for her first official day as CEO, Zoe's ideas for refreshing the company's visual identity, Ethan's growing client list for his consultancy. Through it all, I observed the transformed family dynamics. Gerald more relaxed without the weight of the company resting solely on his shoulders. Claire stepping confidently into leadership. Zoe finding her voice at the family table. Ethan pursuing his environmental passion with his family's full support. And me, finally fully embraced as a foster, my perspective valued, my professional path celebrated alongside theirs. After dinner, we moved to the balcony to enjoy the mild spring evening. Portland's lights glimmered below us, the city oblivious to the quiet transformation that had occurred within one of its prominent business families. I had a thought, Gerald said suddenly, about the recordings. I tensed slightly, still sensitive, about that decision despite his previous understanding. Not a criticism, he clarified, noting my reaction. Actually, the opposite. Those recordings protected the truth when Jason tried to distort it. They gave you and Ethan the confidence to stand your ground. That was the intent, I acknowledged. Self-protection, not ammunition. It made me realize something about family, Gerald continued. We need mechanisms of accountability, ways to ensure we're living up to our stated values, not just in business, but in how we treat each other. What are you suggesting, Dad? Claire asked. Family recordings going forward? Gerald chuckled. Nothing so formal. Just a commitment to honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. To calling each other out when we fall short of who we claim to be. Radical transparency, Zoe quipped, raising her wine glass. The new foster family motto. We all laughed, but the sentiment resonated beneath the humor. The crisis had taught us all the cost of silence, of looking away from uncomfortable truths, of prioritizing harmony over honesty. To transparency, Ethan proposed, raising his glass in a toast. In business and in family. And to new beginnings, Claire added, for Foster Tech and for all of us. As glasses clinked in agreement, I caught Gerald's eye across the table. His gentle nod conveyed everything words couldn't. Gratitude for standing by his family through the crisis, acknowledgement of the price I'd paid for my loyalty, and welcome into the transformed family circle. Later, as we said our goodbyes, Claire lingered after the others had left. I never properly thanked you, she said quietly, for standing your ground when it would have been easier to walk away, for believing the family could be better than what Jason tried to make us. You did the same, I reminded her, at much greater personal cost. She smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes, something I'd rarely seen during her years with Jason. I'm discovering who I am without him. It's terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. You're a foster, I said simply. That's a pretty good foundation to build from. Her quick hug surprised me, but I returned it warmly. As she departed, I realized that perhaps the most significant outcome of the entire ordeal wasn't the corporate restructuring or Jason's departure, but this. The authentic connection between family members who had previously been held apart by manipulation and mistrust. Ethan joined me on the balcony after everyone had gone, wrapping his arms around me from behind as we looked out at the city lights. Quite a journey these past few weeks, he observed, from being accused of turning you against your family to being embraced as a full member of it, I agreed. Not how I expected things to unfold when Jason sent that first threatening email. Sometimes the most painful confrontations lead to the most necessary healing, Ethan reflected. None of this would have happened without you standing your ground. Without us standing our ground, I corrected, turning in his arms. Your courage in confronting the Westridge issues started everything. Partners in corporate crime fighting, he joked, then grew serious. I'm proud of us, Becca, of the choices we made, the lines we refused to cross. In the quiet of the evening, I thought about the journey we'd traveled, from Jason's accusations and threats to this moment of peace and resolution. The path had been painful, the confrontations difficult, but the outcome had exceeded anything I could have imagined. A family healed, a company recommitted to its founding values, relationships strengthened through adversity. And perhaps most importantly, truth had prevailed. Not through the exposure of recordings or public humiliation, but through the quieter, more profound power of standing firmly in one's integrity when it would have been easier to compromise. The recorded family meetings that had started as self-protection had indeed changed everything, not by being played publicly, but by giving us the courage to speak truth when it mattered most. The real transformation had come not from exposure, but from the choice to prioritize truth over power, integrity over expediency, family over control. As Ethan and I stood together on the balcony, looking out at the city we called home, I felt a profound sense of peace. The storm had passed. The family had not just survived but emerged stronger, more authentic, more united in purpose and values. Whatever challenges lay ahead, and there would certainly be more, both personal and professional, we would face them together, grounded in shared principles and mutual respect. The recordings that had once seemed necessary now seemed like relics of a different time, a different family dynamic. They had served their purpose. Now it was time to move forward, to write the next chapter of the Foster family story, one built on transparency, integrity, and the courage to stand for what's right, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.